Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Please consider subscribing and check out our Patreon for more. Enjoy the video. The late afternoon sun filtered through the blinds of Rebecca's dorm room, casting long shadows across the cluttered space. Textbooks and feminist literature lay scattered on every available surface, a testament to her passionate academic pursuits. She leaned against her desk, arms crossed, a challenging glint in her dark eyes as she faced off against Jason. "You think you've got it all figured out, don't you?" Rebecca's voice dripped with sarcasm. "Mr. Big Man on campus never had to face a day of real struggle in your life." Jason ran a hand through his perfectly coiffed hair, a grin plastered on his chiseled face. "Come on, Becca. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. Being a woman can't be that different from being a guy." Rebecca's eyebrows shot up, her mouth falling open in disbelief. "Are you kidding me right now? You have no idea what it's like to navigate this world as a woman, the constant judgment, the double standards, the everyday things we face." "Please," Jason scoffed, waving a dismissive hand. "You're exaggerating. I've got plenty of female friends and they seem to do just fine." Rebecca took a deep breath, her fingers curling into fists at her sides. "All right, hotshot. You think you've got it all figured out? Let's put your money where your mouth is." Jason's interest peaked, his grin widening. "What did you have in mind?" "A bet," Rebecca declared, her eyes gleaming with determination. 30 days, you live as a woman. Experience what it's really like to walk in our shoes. If you can make it through without breaking character or complaining, I'll admit I was wrong about you." Jason hesitated for a moment, his bravado faltering slightly. "And if I can't?" "Then you publicly acknowledge your ignorance and spend the next semester attending every feminist rally and lecture on campus," Rebecca replied, a smirk tugging at the corners of her mouth. Jason's competitive nature kicked in, overriding any doubts. "You're on! This'll be a piece of cake!" Rebecca's smirk grew into a full-blown grin. "We'll see about that. Let's get started, shall we?" The next morning, Jason found himself standing in Rebecca's dorm room once again, this time surrounded by piles of women's clothing, makeup, and various feminine accessories. He eyed the items warily, a nervous flutter in his stomach that he refused to acknowledge. "All right, Jace," Rebecca said, emphasizing the feminine nickname they'd agreed upon. "Let's start with the basics. Underwear." Jason's face flushed as Rebecca held up a lacy bra and matching panties. "You can't be serious." "Dead serious," Rebecca replied, tossing the items at him. "Better get used to it. This is your life for the next month." With a groan, Jason retreated to the bathroom to change. The process was far more complicated than he'd anticipated. The bra clasps were frustratingly difficult to manage, and he found himself contorting his body in ways he never had before, just to get the straps in place. "Everything okay in there?" Rebecca called, amusement evident in her voice. "Just peachy," Jason grumbled, finally emerging from the bathroom. He felt exposed and vulnerable in the delicate undergarments, crossing his arms over his chest self-consciously. Rebecca nodded approvingly. "Not bad for a first attempt. Now, let's move on to the rest of your outfit." Over the next hour, Rebecca guided Jason through the intricacies of women's fashion. He struggled with pantyhose, cursing under his breath as he snagged them with his rough football player's hands. The skirt felt unnaturally breezy, and he had to constantly remind himself to keep his knees together when he sat down. "How do you walk in these things?" Jason complained, tottering unsteadily in a pair of modest heels. Rebecca smirked. "Practice, my dear. Lots and lots of practice." Next came the makeup tutorial. Jason watched in fascination as Rebecca demonstrated the proper techniques for applying foundation, concealer, blush, and eyeshadow. When it was his turn to try, he found himself completely out of his depth. "Ouch!" he yelped, jabbing himself in the eye with the mascara wand. "This is impossible." "Beauty is pain," Rebecca quipped, gently correcting his technique. "You'll get the hang of it, eventually." By the time they finished with hair and accessories, Jason barely recognized the person staring back at him in the mirror. His muscular frame was softened by carefully chosen clothing, his face transformed by skillfully applied makeup. Long, clip-in extensions cascaded down his back, completing the illusion. "Well, well," Rebecca said, standing behind him with a satisfied smile. "Meet Jace, gentlemen. You clean up pretty nicely." Jason, now Jace, swallowed hard, still struggling to reconcile the image before him with his sense of self. "This is surreal. Welcome to your new reality," Rebecca replied, patting him on the shoulder. "Now, let's talk hygiene." The next few hours were a crash course in female grooming rituals. Jace learned about the importance of moisturizing, the various methods of hair removal, and the seemingly endless array of skincare products. "You mean I have to do this every day?" Jace asked incredulously, staring at the lineup of creams, serums, and lotions. Rebecca nodded solemnly. "And that's just the basics. Wait until we get to the weekly face masks and exfoliation routines." As the day wore on, Jace's head spun with all the new information. She, and it was still jarring to think of herself that way, had never realized just how much effort went into maintaining a feminine appearance. "All right," Rebecca announced as evening approached. "Time for your first real test. We're going out for dinner." Jace's eyes widened in panic. "What? No way, I can't go out like this." "Oh, but you can, and you will," Rebecca insisted, her tone brooking no argument. "Remember our bet? This is your life now, Jace. Time to face the world." With trembling hands, Jace gathered her purse, another foreign concept, and followed Rebecca out of the dorm. Each step in her heels felt precarious, and she was acutely aware of the way her skirt swished around her legs. As they walked across campus, Jace felt the weight of curious stares. She hunched her shoulders, trying to make herself smaller, less noticeable. It was a stark contrast to her usual confident strut. "Stand up straight," Rebecca murmured. "Confidence is key. Act like you belong, and people will believe it." Jace took a deep breath, forcing herself to straighten her spine and lift her chin. It felt unnatural, but she was determined to see this through. They arrived at a small cafe just off campus, and Jace's anxiety ratcheted up another notch as they approached the hostess stand. "Table for two, please," Rebecca said smoothly. The hostess smiled warmly. "Of course. Right this way, ladies." Jace's heart skipped a beat at being addressed as a woman. She followed Rebecca to their table, hyper-aware of every movement. Sitting down proved to be another challenge as she struggled to keep her knees together and her skirt in place. "Relax," Rebecca whispered across the table. "You're doing fine." As they perused the menus, Jace couldn't help but notice the differences in how she was being perceived. The waiter's tone was softer, more solicitous when addressing her. A group of men at a nearby table kept glancing in their direction, their gazes lingering a bit too long for comfort. "Is it always like this?" Jace asked quietly, shifting uncomfortably under the attention. Rebecca's expression softened slightly. "Welcome to our world, honey. This is just the tip of the iceberg." As they ate their meals, Rebecca coached Jace on feminine etiquette, taking smaller bites, dabbing at her lips instead of wiping, and engaging in light conversation. It was exhausting, having to think about every little action that had once been second nature. The real test came when Jace excused herself to use the restroom. She hesitated outside the doors, suddenly unsure of which one to enter. "Go on," Rebecca encouraged. "The women's room is your domain now." With a deep breath, Jace pushed open the door to the women's restroom. The space was foreign and intimidating. She locked herself in a stall, face burning with embarrassment as she navigated the challenges of using the facilities while wearing a skirt and pantyhose. As she washed her hands, Jace caught sight of herself in the mirror. The face staring back at her was still jarring, softer, more delicate than she was used to. A woman touching up her lipstick at the next sink gave her a friendly smile. "I love your earrings," the stranger commented. Jace's hand flew to her ear, having forgotten about the dangling accessories. "Oh, thank you," she managed to stammer out, her voice higher than usual. Returning to the table, Jace felt a mix of relief and lingering unease. "That was intense," she admitted to Rebecca. Rebecca nodded sympathetically. "It gets easier with time, but you never quite get used to the constant awareness of your surroundings, the need to be on guard." As they finished their meal and prepared to leave, Jace noticed the group of men from earlier getting up as well. A flutter of anxiety rippled through her as she realized they might cross paths outside. Sure enough, as Jace and Rebecca exited the cafe, the men were lingering near the entrance.
"Hey there, beautiful,"
one of them called out, his eyes raking over Jace's figure. "Why don't you ditch your friend and come hang out with us?" Jace froze, completely unprepared for this situation. She felt exposed, vulnerable in a way she never had before. Rebecca stepped slightly in front of her. "Not interested," Rebecca said firmly, taking Jace's arm and steering her away. As they walked briskly back towards campus, Jace's heart raced. "Does that happen often?" she asked, her voice shaky. Rebecca's expression was grim. "More often than you'd think, and sometimes they don't take no for an answer so easily." The weight of this new reality settled heavily on Jace's shoulders. She'd always considered herself a protector of women, but she'd never truly understood the constant vigilance required to navigate the world as a woman. Back in the safety of Rebecca's dorm room, Jace collapsed onto the bed, physically and emotionally drained. "How do you do this every day?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Rebecca sat down beside her, her expression softening. "We don't have a choice. It's our reality. But that's why we fight so hard for change, for equality." As Jace began the arduous process of removing her makeup and changing back into comfortable clothing, she found herself reflecting on the day's experiences. The constant awareness of her appearance, the subtle and not so subtle ways people treated her differently, the underlying current of potential threat, it was overwhelming.
"I had no idea,"
Jace admitted, her voice thick with emotion. "I mean, I knew women faced challenges, but I never really understood." Rebecca nodded, a small smile playing at her lips. "That's the point of this experiment, Jace. To walk a mile in our shoes, literally and figuratively." As Jace settled into bed that night, her mind raced with all she'd learned in just one day. The physical discomforts, the pinching shoes, the constricting undergarments, the layers of makeup were just the beginning. It was the emotional and psychological toll that truly caught her off guard. She thought about the countless women in her life, her mother, her sisters, her female friends and classmates. How many times had she dismissed their concerns or minimized their experiences? The guilt settled heavily in her chest. Sleep eluded her as she tossed and turned, replaying the day's events. The nervousness of stepping out in public, the constant self-consciousness about her appearance, the subtle shift in how people addressed and interacted with her. It was a lot to process. As dawn broke, Jace realized with a start that this was just the beginning. She had 29 more days of this journey ahead of her. The thought was both daunting and surprisingly intriguing. Despite the challenges, there was a part of her that was curious to delve deeper into this new perspective. With a determined sigh, Jace dragged herself out of bed, wincing at the soreness in her feet from the previous day's heels. She had a long way to go, but she was starting to understand that this experience might change her in ways she never expected. As she began the now familiar routine of applying her makeup and selecting an outfit, Jace caught her reflection in the mirror. The person staring back at her was still unfamiliar, but there was a glimmer of something new in her eyes. A budding awareness, a growing empathy. "Ready for day 2? Rebecca asked, poking her head into the room. Jace took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. "As ready as I'll ever be," she replied, her voice a mix of trepidation and resolve. As they stepped out into the bright morning sunlight, Jace couldn't help but wonder what new lessons and challenges this day would bring. One thing was certain. She would never look at the world, or herself, quite the same way again. As Jace stepped into her second day of living as a woman, the initial shock began to wear off, replaced by a growing curiosity. The morning routine, while still challenging, felt slightly less daunting. Her fingers fumbled less with the bra clasps, and she managed to apply her mascara without stabbing herself in the eye. "You're getting better at this," Rebecca observed, nodding approvingly at Jace's outfit choice, a flowy blouse paired with high-waisted jeans. Jace managed a small smile. "Don't get too excited. I still feel like I'm playing dress-up." The day brought new experiences and challenges. Jace attended her first class as a woman, hyper-aware of the way her classmates' gazes lingered on her. She found herself second-guessing every movement, every word that came out of her mouth. As the days progressed, Jace began to notice more of these subtle inequalities. In group projects, her ideas were often overlooked or attributed to male classmates. She caught herself apologizing more, using softer language to avoid coming across as bossy or aggressive. By the end of the first week, Jace was exhausted, but also intrigued. She found herself paying more attention to the women around her, noticing the small ways they navigated the world, the keys held between fingers when walking alone at night, the polite smiles in response to unwanted attention. "I never realized how much energy it takes," Jace admitted to Rebecca one evening. "Just existing as a woman. It's exhausting." Rebecca nodded sympathetically. "It is. But it also makes us stronger in ways many people don't understand." As the second week began, Jace started to feel more comfortable in her new skin. The physical aspects of femininity, the clothing, the makeup, the mannerisms, became less foreign. She even found herself enjoying certain aspects, like the creative expression of fashion and the soothing ritual of skincare. One afternoon, while browsing a local boutique with Rebecca, Jace found herself drawn to a beautiful sundress. Without thinking, she grabbed it off the rack and headed to the fitting room. "Oh my God," Jace breathed, staring at her reflection. The dress hugged her curves in all the right places, making her feel simultaneously powerful and feminine. Rebecca poked her head into the fitting room, her eyes widening. "Wow, Jace, you look amazing." For the first time since the experiment began, Jace felt a genuine thrill of pleasure at her appearance. She twirled, watching the skirt flare out around her legs. I kind of love it," she admitted. As they left the store, Jace clutching the bag containing her new dress, she felt a shift in her perspective. It wasn't just about playing a role anymore. She was starting to understand the complex interplay between societal expectations, personal expression, and identity. The third week brought new challenges as Jace delved deeper into the female experience. She attended a women's support group meeting with Rebecca, listening to stories. The raw honesty and solidarity among the group members left a profound impact on Jace. By the fourth week, Jace was surprised to realize she was no longer counting down the days until the experiment ended. Instead, she found herself savoring the experiences, good and bad. She'd formed genuine friendships with women she'd previously only seen as potential conquests. She'd discovered a sense of community and solidarity she'd never known before. One evening, as Jace was getting ready for a night out with her new friends, she caught herself humming happily as she applied her makeup. The realization hit her like a ton of bricks. She was enjoying this. Not just tolerating it, not just going through the motions, but genuinely enjoying the process of presenting as a woman. "Rebecca?" Jace called out, her voice trembling slightly. "Can we talk?" Rebecca entered the room, concern etched on her face. "What's wrong, Jace?" Jace took a deep breath, struggling to find the right words. I think I'm starting to love this. Being a woman, I mean, is that normal?" Rebecca's expression softened. "Oh, Jace, there's no normal when it comes to gender identity. What you're feeling is valid." They spent the next few hours talking, Jace pouring out her conflicted feelings. The sense of freedom she felt presenting as a woman, the comfort she found in female friendships, the way she felt more authentically herself than she ever had as Jason. "I don't know what this means," Jace admitted, wiping away tears. "I've always been so sure of who I was, and now Rebecca wrapped her in a tight hug. It's okay not to have all the answers right now. Gender is complex, and it's okay to explore and question. The final days of the experiment were a whirlwind of emotions for Jace. She threw herself fully into the experience, reveling in the freedom to express herself in ways she'd never allowed before. She wore the sundress she'd bought, feeling a thrill of joy at the way it swished around her legs. She engaged in deep conversations with her female friends, feeling a sense of connection she'd never experienced in male friendships. On the last night of the experiment, Jace stood in front of the mirror, studying her reflection. The person staring back at her was so different from the Jason who had agreed to this bet a month ago. It wasn't just the physical changes, the makeup, the clothes, the longer hair. There was a softness in her eyes, an openness in her expression that had never been there before.
I don't want to go back.
Jace whispered to her reflection, the truth of the words sinking in. She loved being a woman. She loved the person she had become over the past month, more empathetic, more aware, more authentically herself. With trembling hands, Jace picked up her phone and dialed Rebecca's number. "Can you come over?" she asked, her voice shaky. I think I need to talk about what happens after tomorrow." As she waited for Rebecca to arrive, Jace's mind raced with questions and possibilities. She didn't have all the answers yet, but she knew one thing for certain. The journey of self-discovery she'd embarked on was far from over. The bet might be ending, but Jace's exploration of her gender identity was just beginning. The knock on the door startled Jace out of her thoughts. She took a deep breath, smoothing down her skirt nervously before opening the door to face Rebecca and the conversation that would shape her future. Rebecca's concerned face appeared in the doorway. "Jace, is everything okay?" Jace stepped back, allowing Rebecca to enter the room. Her heart was pounding, but she felt a sense of certainty she hadn't experienced in weeks. I think I need to talk about continuing this after the bet ends." Rebecca's eyes widened in surprise. "You mean, I don't want to go back to being Jason," Jace blurted out, the words tumbling from her lips. "I know it sounds crazy, but this past month, it's like I've finally found myself, the real me." Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out Patreon for a lot more content and early access to YouTube videos.